Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts or story in the comments, and subscribe to our latest stories. Before I start, tell me where you are watching me from. I wonder which cities and towns will join me in this memory that will follow me for years. It all started on a Tuesday evening, the kind of evening where the sky hangs low with a muted orange, and the air carries a crispness that hints at winter just around the corner. I had just wrapped up the last of my emails, the office quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning and the occasional creak of the floorboards as I shifted in my chair. That's when my phone buzzed, displaying a message I didn't expect, a text from my boss, Michael. "Would you like to join me for dinner tonight? I'd like to discuss a project idea with you outside the office." At first, I hesitated. Michael had always been professional, precise, someone whose presence demanded respect. But there was something in the way he phrased the invitation, a subtle warmth that I hadn't noticed before. I paused for a moment, considering the evening I had planned for myself, a quiet night, a cup of tea, maybe some reading. But curiosity got the better of me. I replied with a simple, "Yes, I'd be happy to join you." The restaurant he chose was unexpected, tucked away in a quiet street downtown. As I arrived, I noticed the soft glow of string lights spilling from the windows, casting a welcoming warmth onto the brick exterior. I stepped inside, and the gentle clinking of cutlery and low hum of conversation immediately put me at ease. Michael was already there, seated at a corner table with a small candle flickering between us. He stood as I approached, offering a handshake that quickly turned into a polite, considerate nod. We began with small talk, the usual questions about the week, the project, but gradually the conversation deepened. I found myself talking about things I rarely shared at work, my love for old books, my attempts at painting, even the little quirks that made my days more interesting. Michael listened with an attentiveness that felt rare, his eyes reflecting genuine interest rather than the formal politeness I was accustomed to in professional settings. The meal arrived, carefully plated dishes that smelled as comforting as they looked, and we navigated the course slowly, each bite punctuating our conversation. I noticed the subtle details, the way he pushed his chair in slightly closer to share a story, the brief pause before he spoke as if carefully choosing words that mattered. There was a rhythm to the evening, a quiet intimacy born from mutual respect and understanding rather than anything overt. At one point, he shared a story from his childhood, a memory of his father teaching him to repair old watches. It was a tender moment, the kind that strips away layers of authority and reveals the human underneath. I laughed, genuinely, a sound that seemed to surprise me with its freedom. And when I spoke, he listened not just with his ears but with a kind of patience that made me feel seen. Outside, the streetlights cast long reflections on the wet pavement from a recent drizzle, and I realized that hours had passed almost unnoticed. The conversation had shifted seamlessly from professional aspirations to personal reflections, moments of vulnerability that I hadn't anticipated sharing with my boss. But there was a sense of safety, an unspoken understanding that nothing would be judged, only respected. As we finished our desserts, Michael leaned back slightly, his expression thoughtful. "I've always admired your dedication," he said quietly, "but tonight, I realized there's so much more to know about you beyond the office walls." There was no pressure in his words, only an acknowledgement that went deeper than professional accolades. I felt a warmth spread through me, a mix of gratitude and a surprising clarity about the kind of connections we rarely allow ourselves to pursue in adulthood. When the evening drew to a close, we walked out together into the cool night. The city felt different somehow, quieter, yet alive, as if the world had shifted to accommodate the weight of our conversation. We paused for a moment, standing on the sidewalk under the glow of the street lamp, neither rushing to part ways. "Thank you for dinner," I said softly, meaning more than just the meal. "Thank you for sharing tonight," he replied, his smile understated but genuine, and then, with a final nod, we went our separate ways. But as I walked back to my car, I realized that the evening had given me more than I expected, a glimpse into a connection built on mutual respect, a shared understanding, and the rare, quiet joy of being fully present with another person. It was a night that would linger in memory, not because of what was said, but because of the space we had created together, a space where honesty, reflection, and growth could exist, even in the simplest acts of conversation over dinner. I drove home slowly, the streets glistening, the air crisp, and my mind replaying each word, each laugh, each small, meaningful gesture. And I knew, without a doubt, that this was just the beginning of a journey, not one of romance, but of discovery, trust, and the kind of connection that stays with you for years, quietly shaping the way you see the world and the people in it. The evening ended, but the memory remained, a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected invitations can lead to the most profound experiences, and that growth and understanding often come in the form of simple, shared moments that leave an imprint far deeper than we anticipate. The next morning, I woke up with a lingering sense of calm that surprised me. Normally, after such a long day at work or an evening out, my mind races with tasks and obligations. But last night's dinner had left a quiet imprint, a feeling of balance between anticipation and reflection. I brewed my coffee slowly, letting the aroma fill the kitchen, and replayed snippets of the evening in my mind. The way Michael had listened, really listened, to the stories I rarely voice, had left me feeling unexpectedly light. When I arrived at the office, the usual bustle of ringing phones and clacking keyboards seemed almost mundane, yet familiar. Michael was already at his desk, focused on some reports. I hesitated a moment, unsure if I should mention our dinner immediately. But as soon as he looked up and smiled, that same warmth from last night seemed to carry across the room. "Good morning," he said, his tone casual yet inviting. We slipped into our usual workflow, but something had shifted. Conversations between us carried a subtle new depth, a thread of understanding that hadn't existed before. He asked my opinion on a strategy I'd been hesitant to share, and I found myself speaking freely, confident that my thoughts were valued not just for the content, but for me, personally. There was a rare trust forming, one that didn't need to be explained or justified, only acknowledged. Later in the day, he invited me to join him for a short walk around the block, citing the need for a break from screens and paperwork. The autumn air was brisk but invigorating, carrying the scent of damp leaves and freshly turned soil from the park nearby. As we walked side by side, I noticed the subtle cadence of his speech, the thoughtful pauses before he shared his insights. It wasn't just conversation, it felt like a dance, a rhythm we were discovering together, slowly and naturally. He shared a memory from his recent trip, recounting an encounter with an artist in a small gallery tucked away on a quiet street. His eyes lit up in a way that made me realize he, too, appreciated beauty and nuance in ways that often go unseen in the corporate world. I responded with my own experiences visiting art shows, museums, and even the little exhibits tucked into corners of the city that few notice. The exchange wasn't forced, it was an organic, effortless discovery of mutual appreciation. Over the following days, our interactions carried this quiet evolution. Meetings still happened, deadlines still loomed, but beneath the professional exterior, there was a thread of personal recognition. Small gestures, Michael remembering a detail I mentioned days ago, offering a quiet word of encouragement, built an invisible bridge between us. It was subtle, nothing dramatic, yet I felt a growing sense of connection that transcended the normal boundaries of office relationships. One afternoon, he invited me to another dinner, not at the same restaurant this time, but at a small bistro known for its rustic charm. The evening air was cool, and the city's lights glimmered off the wet pavement, a soft backdrop to the night. The interior was intimate, with low lighting and shelves of old books lining the walls. Michael chose a table by the window, and as we settled into our chairs, I realized again how rare it was to find someone who listens, observes, and responds with genuine care. The conversation flowed effortlessly. We talked about ambitions, but also about the lessons life had taught us, the mistakes, the triumphs, the moments that had shaped us. Michael's voice carried a quiet honesty, one that invited me to share in return. I spoke about challenges I'd faced, times I'd doubted myself, and he responded not with judgment, but with understanding, and at times, laughter that lightened the weight of my recollections. As dessert arrived, a delicate tart. Warm and subtly spiced, we reflected on the simplicity of sharing a meal and conversation without any agenda beyond connection. I realized that these dinners weren't about professional advantage or formal mentorship, they were about something rarer, two people recognizing each other's humanity and acknowledging it openly. Walking back to our cars later, the crisp night air seemed charged with possibility. The city felt alive in a gentle, patient way, as if it too understood that these moments of authentic engagement were treasures in a world often ruled by routine. "I value these evenings," Michael said quietly, his voice carrying the same sincerity as last night. "They remind me of why we do what we do, and why connection matters." I nodded, feeling the truth of his words resonate deeply. Me too, I replied. It's easy to forget that sometimes. That night, as I lay in bed reflecting, I felt a profound sense of gratitude not just for the dinners, or for Michael's company, but for the unexpected realization that meaningful connections can grow quietly, steadily, and without pretense. It was a discovery that would shape my perspective, not only on professional relationships but on life itself. And I knew, in some quiet corner of my heart, that these evenings were only the beginning of a journey that would teach me about trust, respect, and the beauty of truly being seen. The following week carried a gentle tension that felt entirely new to me. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was the kind of awareness that makes you pay attention to details you would normally overlook: the way someone laughs, the way they tilt their head while listening, the little pauses that signal thoughtfulness. Each morning as I arrived at the office, I found myself scanning for his familiar smile, a quiet curiosity bubbling beneath my usual routine. Michael seemed to share the same energy, though never overtly. There was a subtle shift in his demeanor, the way he greeted me with a nod that lingered just a moment longer than usual, or the way he'd ask about a book I had mentioned in passing. These small acknowledgements created a thread between us that was invisible to anyone else, but palpable to both of us. One evening, he suggested we step out after work for a walk along the river walk, a scenic spot that most tourists visited during daylight. The sun had dipped low, casting golden streaks across the water, and the city lights were beginning to sparkle like scattered gems. As we strolled, the air carried a softness, blending the distant hum of traffic with the gentle lapping of water against the banks. I realized that these moments outside the office walls were becoming as important to me as the work itself, offering clarity and perspective I hadn't known I needed. We spoke about goals, yes, but also about failures and the way they shaped us. Michael shared stories from his early career, times he'd felt unprepared or uncertain, and I found myself opening up about moments when I questioned my own path. There was a rare comfort in that honesty, the kind that doesn't demand explanation or apology, only recognition. I discovered that vulnerability could be a quiet strength, and that respect could grow in the spaces where we reveal ourselves fully. The conversation shifted naturally to memories of family and childhood, moments that made us laugh or pause in reflection. He described the old oak tree in his grandfather's backyard where he and his siblings used to play, and I shared a story about a small lake near my childhood home where I learned to swim. There was a rhythm to the exchange, a back and forth that felt effortless and yet deeply meaningful. Dinner followed, in a small, understated restaurant tucked behind a row of historic townhouses. The interior was cozy, with warm lighting and rustic wooden tables, the scent of fresh herbs and baked bread enveloping us as we sat down. The meal was simple but elegant, and we allowed the conversation to meander through various topics: books we loved, the small joys in our daily routines, the aspirations we held for the future. Every word seemed measured, thoughtful, never rushed, as if the world had slowed just enough to allow these shared moments to breathe. At one point, Michael leaned back slightly, a small smile playing at the corner of his lips. "It's rare," he said, "to find someone you can converse with like this. Not just about work or achievements, but about life in general." I nodded, feeling a warmth that wasn't romantic, but profound in its sincerity. "I know," I replied softly. "It's a reminder that connections like these are rare and valuable." As the evening progressed, I noticed how attuned we had become to each other's presence, the way he seemed to anticipate my reactions, and I, in turn, recognized his subtle cues. It was a harmony that wasn't forced, it was built slowly through shared experiences, mutual respect, and the willingness to be present. Walking back through the quiet streets, the city seemed transformed, bathed in a gentle, reflective glow. We paused at a small bridge overlooking the river, the water catching the lights in shimmering patterns. "I feel like these evenings are teaching me something important," I said, more to myself than to him. Michael nodded thoughtfully. "We often overlook what really matters," he replied. "But when someone takes the time to notice, to listen, it changes the way you see everything." That night, as I drove home, I reflected on how much I had discovered, not only about Michael, but about myself. The dinners, the walks, the conversations, they had become a mirror, showing me the strength in openness, the joy in understanding, and the quiet power of respect. I realized that these experiences were slowly reshaping my approach to life, teaching me that meaningful connections could emerge in unexpected ways, and that sometimes, the simplest moments held the greatest significance. The memory of that evening stayed with me, lingering like the faint glow of city lights reflected on the river. It was a reminder that true connection, built on trust, understanding, and presence, was a rare treasure, one that didn't need to be labeled, only cherished, and allowed to grow naturally over time. The following weeks seemed to move with a gentle, unhurried pace, each day marked by the small yet meaningful interactions that had become a quiet rhythm in my life. Our dinners and walks continued, but now they carried a deeper sense of understanding, a familiarity that felt both comforting and invigorating. Each encounter revealed another layer of insight about Michael, about myself, and about the nature of human connection when it is nurtured with patience and respect. One evening, as I stepped out of my car, the city was bathed in the soft glow of twilight, and the faint scent of autumn leaves hung in the air. Michael was already waiting at the entrance of a small bistro, a gentle smile on his face that seemed to mirror my own anticipation. As we walked together, the conversation began with light topics, work updates, recent news, but it soon shifted seamlessly into reflections on life, achievements, and regrets. There was an unspoken understanding that this was a space where honesty was not only allowed but welcomed. Dinner was served in a quiet corner of the restaurant, the soft hum of other diners providing a comforting backdrop. I noticed how attuned we had become to each other's moods and gestures, the way he offered me the first bite of a shared dish, the subtle nod when he noticed something in my expression, the quiet patience that allowed conversations to flow naturally without forcing any conclusions. It was an intimacy of awareness, born from weeks of shared experience, rather than words or declarations. At one point, our discussion turned to the paths we had chosen and the decisions that had shaped our lives. Michael spoke about the challenges he had faced in his career, the moments when doubt threatened to overwhelm him, and the lessons he had drawn from each setback. I shared my own reflections, the struggles I had encountered, and the moments of self-discovery that had led me to this point. There was no judgment, only mutual recognition of the resilience required to navigate life's complexities. The meal concluded, but neither of us seemed eager to leave. We lingered over coffee, allowing the conversation to meander through memories, observations, and hopes for the future. I realized that these evenings had become more than just a chance to connect outside the office. They were lessons in presence, patience, and the value of being truly heard. After dinner, we walked along a quiet street, the city lights reflecting in puddles from a recent drizzle. The air was crisp, carrying the faint aroma of rain and earth. We paused at a small park bench overlooking a fountain, the gentle trickle of water providing a serene accompaniment to our words. "I think we've both grown through these conversations," Michael said quietly, almost as if speaking to the night itself. "Not just in our work, but in understanding what matters, and who matters." I nodded, feeling the truth of his words resonate deeply. "It's rare to find that kind of understanding," I replied. "I've learned more about myself in these past weeks than I thought possible." There was a quiet reflection in the moments that followed, a shared acknowledgement that the connection we had nurtured was meaningful beyond measure. It wasn't about accomplishments, recognition, or accolades. It was about the rare experience of being truly seen, heard, and respected. And in that realization, I felt a profound sense of gratitude and clarity, a recognition that these experiences would stay with me, shaping the way I approached relationships and life itself. As we finally said our goodbyes and went our separate ways, the night felt charged with a subtle yet powerful energy, a sense that meaningful connection, trust, and respect could transform even the simplest of interactions into something unforgettable. Driving home, I reflected on the journey of the past weeks, on the growth, insight, and shared humanity that had quietly unfolded between us. I knew, without a doubt, that this chapter of my life had left an indelible mark, a reminder that genuine connections rooted in empathy, understanding, and respect are among life's most profound treasures. The memory of these evenings would remain with me, a gentle yet persistent presence, reminding me of the power of patience, the beauty of discovery, and the quiet joy of connecting with someone on a level that transcends ordinary conversation. And as I drifted to sleep, the city lights fading in the distance, I carried with me the knowledge that these shared experiences had not only enriched my life but had opened a door to deeper understanding, reflection, and growth, one that would continue to influence the way I lived, worked, and connected with the world around me for years to come.